ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last but one session of the afternoon programme of Day 2 here at the Astana International Forum. I'm Tony Barber, and with me to my left is Alain Berset. We're very pleased to have you here, Alain. Alain's the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Now, you will be aware that in Europe there are quite a few institutions, agencies and bodies with the word council in them, and it's easy sometimes to be a little confused between the different functions of them all. So I'm going to ask Alain to explain very concisely what the Council of Europe does, what it's doing today, and in particular, given its role as a kind of pillar of multilateralism and defending democracy, the rule of law, and human rights, since the period immediately after the Second World War, how is it finding today's international climate, which is not so easy? We're going to keep this to about 25 minutes. I'll try and have a little bit of time for some questions at the end, but for now, straight over to Alain. Alain, the Council of Europe, a potted summary of its actions and responsibilities.
So thank you everybody. Thank you, Tony, for this introduction. Maybe I will also begin with a question. What do we need today? I mean, we will probably agree that we need stability, we need predictability, and we need rules-based order. We need this. And it is exactly at the same, in the same situation that the Council of Europe was founded more than 75 years ago, in 1949, after the World War II. It was exactly the same idea, to try to have stability, peaceful relations, predictability, and a rules-based order. It is exactly what is doing the Council of Europe. 46 member states. I would say it is the geographical scope of Europe. I mean, including, the South Caucasus, all the Western Balkans, UK. We have also Ukraine and Moldova, and also obviously the 27 members of the European Union as members, based on the European Convention on Human Rights, created in 1950, and then with the European Court on Human Rights, addressing all the violations of human rights on the continent. That's the main point. And then 75 years is quite a long time, We had a long time to organize new fields, to develop new conventions, to address the human rights, the support for democracy and for the rule of law, and to try always to address the necessity of convergence that we have between the 46 member states and in Europe. To be really brief.
Okay, and since we are here in Astana, capital of Kazakhstan, explain the relevance of the Council of Europe to Kazakhstan, because the Council does have countries that are kind of associated and so on with it.
No, thank you. I mean, what I addressed before was the necessity to have a coherence and convergence between the 46 member states. But it would be wrong. It would be wrong just to consider the Council of Europe just like an organization trying to have this coherence, internal coherence between the 46 member states. We also have relations. I mean, as Europe, as a continent, with those values, democracy, based on those values, democracy, rule of law, and human rights, with North America. By the way, Mexico, Canada, and the US are observers to the Council of Europe. We have relations with Asia. Japan is an observer. And the question is, which relevance has the Council of Europe for Kazakhstan? But this is also, which relevance has Kazakhstan for the Council of Europe? I mean, to work together in a kind of policy that we have also across the borders that we have for the continent. And what we are doing here, and it's interesting today because we just launched today the action plan with the priorities that we have with Kazakhstan, between Kazakhstan and the Council of Europe. You know, based on programs, based on projects, based on the convergence, as I mentioned before, and based also on invitation for Kazakhstan to join some conventions that we have. Well, I could mention different conventions, but just one that I want to mention is the so-called Istanbul Convention, fighting against the violence against women and girls. A very interesting project that we are also working on with Kazakhstan. And I mean, that is the relevance of the Council of Europe for Kazakhstan, to offer bodies where it is possible to join, you know, to work together. And relevance of Kazakhstan for the Council of Europe is to have an access to this region, to Central Asia, to work together, to learn to work together and to do this more and more and more, to develop also this convergence. I use a bit too much the word, I know, but I mean it's important in a world where everything seems to be diverging. This convergence also with Kazakhstan and for the population and with the authorities of Kazakhstan.
Very good. It seems to me that one could pick out three periods in the Council of Europe's existence when it's been the particular focus of attention. One is in its early years after its creation, when it was clearly born in an atmosphere when the values you described, human rights, the rule of law, democracy, was perceived to be under threat from communism, and therefore something was needed to bind the states that held these values together. That was at the very end of the 1940s, early 1950s. The second period that struck me from personal experience was just after the end of the Cold War, when countries in Central and Eastern Europe that had emerged out of communism, it seemed to me, were very keen to join the Council of Europe. It mattered to them. It was a badge of respectability, pride, a sense of achievement. That was the second period. The third period is related to the gradual emergence of the judicial arm of the Council, that's to say the European Court of Human Rights, which seems to me to have become a bone of controversy in recent times. And if I may, I'd like to quote from the letter that you issued just in the last week or so to the audience. This concerned a document that was put forward by Denmark and Italy and a number of other European states, Austria, Belgium, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland, and it called for what it described as a new and open-minded conversation, close quotes, about how the European Court of Human Rights interprets the European Convention on Human Rights, particularly in the field of migration, a sensitive issue in Europe. And Alain's reply to this letter certainly didn't pull its punches, as they say. It was very firm in its language. This is what you wrote, Alain. Upholding the independence and impartiality of the court is our bedrock. Debate is healthy, but politicizing the court is not. In a society governed by the rule of law, no judiciary should face political pressure. Institutions that protect fundamental rights cannot bend to political cycles. If they do, we risk eroding the very stability they were built to ensure. The court must not be weaponized, neither against governments nor by them. So a very firm statement in favour of judicial independence. Can you explain why you felt it necessary to be so firm on this issue?
I think when we are witnessing a world where it seems that we are losing orientation, we are losing the sense for the long term. I mean, we are always seeing more and more and more on the very short term, and with the risk to have that much information that it is not more possible, you know, to prioritize and to have a clear orientation. In this kind of moment, it is necessary to speak clearly. As you just read the statement, I was also telling to myself, okay, this is quite tough to, to answer so clearly to, I mean, 1/3 of the member states of the EU at the level of head of state and head of government. But I think it must help us to have a productive debate, a productive discussion on the right elements. And maybe just to mention this, I mean, you know, I think it is possible, and it must be possible, and it is necessary to have an openness for dialogue as much as possible on everything. But there is also exceptions, and I think if we need to have productive dialogue and productive discussion about the European Convention, about migration, you know, about the new challenges that we are facing now, I mean, we need to address this at the right level. And the right level is a political level, also mentioning the Convention. But not starting a discussion about the case law of the court. It's really different. I mean, you know, also in a country, it will be always possible to have a discussion at the parliament about laws. And if you don't like the case law of the court, you need to discuss about the laws, not about the case law. I mean, it is important to have a good structure for positive and productive debate. That's the first point. The second point, I think, it's probably not the best moment right now when we are facing those challenges, and they are important, among them migration. I mean, it's probably not the best thing to do to destructure or to destroy the structure that we built in the very long term, 75 years, to address those issues. And the convergence that we had over the 75 years to try to have also collective case law for all continents, it helps to have predictability, it helps to have stability. I mean, it is possible to have this discussion about the possibility for the countries to do more without the possibility to address the court, to discuss on this, but it must be done at the right level. If I may, I just want Tony to come back to the 3 periods that you mentioned. I fully agree with you. I mean, the first one, clearly, it was also a very tough time after the World War II, the first years. Then we had the end of the Cold War, really a time where things were happening in a very short time. And now we have, again, such a moment of instability, not knowing clearly where is going the journey. And you know what? The Council of Europe was exactly founded for times like these. It was not founded for good weather conditions. When you have good weather conditions, everything is going well. It was exactly founded for bad weather conditions, to rebuild an environment in Europe after the World War II where democracy, rule of law and human rights can develop with stability. At the end of the Cold War, it was one of those moments that was important also for the enlargement of the Council of Europe. And right now, when we have the impression, and more than an impression, that there is a kind of destabilization of the order. You know, it was a stable situation. We have now a lot of movement, and we will have at the end probably, who knows when and how, a new kind of equilibrium. And for those moments, it is really important to have, how to say this in English, clear lighthouse to see in which direction we want to work. And to come back to the fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals for the continent, for Europe, but also beyond, are the values. The strong sense for democracy. I don't see a better alternative to have stability and good leadership for a country. To have a strong rule of law. I don't see a better alternative to have predictability, stability, and good conditions for socio-economic developments, for investment, for trade also, and a good protection of human rights, because it is the only way to have, at the individual level, also predictability and stability for the population that we have. And exactly this must be a recall in this quite complicated moments that we are living now.
If we compare the early years of the Council of Europe from 1949 into the 1950s and today, I wonder what the founders of the Council of Europe in 1949 would say today, because when they created the organization to uphold, for example, human rights, it was clearly with a view to what was going on in Stalinist Eastern Europe. Show trials, persecution of opposition, prisons full. Uh, and that, of course, equally applies to abuse of the rule of law at that time. What they might not have foreseen was that 75 years later, you have democratically elected parties or coalition governments which interfere with the independence of the judiciary and justify it on the grounds that, well, we won an election. I mean, that they might not have foreseen, possibly.
I mean, the context is different. The context is different. We are living right now in a world where, well, the globalization is a reality. I mean, for information, for the trade, for the possibility to travel, it is not the same world that we had at the end of the World War II. And then, since 20 years now, we have what we can call a technological revolution. And it plays a huge role, and it has huge consequences also for the democracy. Just think about what is important for democracy. It is the formation of the opinion. You need to have an opinion, and people with information, different informations, able to take a decision and to make a vote. And until 2000, 2010, we had few producers of information, and it was necessary to have a lot of resources to be a producer of information, and it was linked with deontology, it was linked with also an assessment of the level of the quality of the information, the control about the sources, and the fact is a fact and an opinion is an opinion. Right now, what do we have? We have a total fragmentation about the production of information. Well, you are, I am, and every person in this room is potentially a producer for information with a global potential. And that makes it much more difficult, and it's one additional element that makes it difficult to compare with the time just after World War II. But you're right, we have now living in a situation and a phase where we see that elected people are also putting in question the old system that had produced them, I would say, also as elected body. It's okay, I think we must be able to have this kind of discussion and dialogue. The question is at the end, what do we want to achieve? And which is the alternative? There is always an alternative. The question is not to know if there is an alternative or not. There is always an alternative. The real question is the alternative better than what we have? There is alternative to democracy. Is this better than democracy? And what does it mean exactly, for example?
Well, there will be many in this audience who will know what the alternative to that is. I'm going to offer the opportunity, should anyone in the audience wish to ask Alain a question, please feel free. Don't be afraid. Yes, we do have a question right at the back. Thank you.
I am heading a consulting company, and in Kazakhstan we have an challenging institutional legislative situation. We want to be more like Europe in a sense of environment protection. So we are now discussing very large-scale issues. We need to protect the animal world, the plant world. We are now looking at international experience when drafting our legislation, but still, for global issues like distribution, allocation of water resources and other problems, these issues are in the very beginning. We are just starting to discuss them, but we are not yet on a level of positive experience that exists in Europe or in the West. So what's your view on this allocation of natural resources? In your opinion, what do you think? interaction should be between Kazakhstan and international community in these environmental issues? Is there any positive experience already of cooperating between these countries?
I just had the end of the question. But I hope I got the main message. It is about the environment, about resources, and legislative environment. If I heard well, I hope I'm right with this. And it is a very good question because it's exactly one of the new challenges that we are facing right now. How to integrate the environmental issues in the whole context of, not to say regulation, but also convention, and also with environmental crimes. I think that's the most important thing when we are working together. I mean, 46 member states, plus observers, plus all the countries where we have strong partnership like Kazakhstan, to see early enough which are the new, not to say threats, challenges that we are facing with the evolution that we are seeing. And that's why I can tell you that we are very active on those elements with the Council of Europe. It is much easier, clearly, for member states to be on board because they are on the everyday basis present in Strasbourg and with us at the headquarters to address those issues and to think together what can we do. But I take also your question as an invitation to address these issues with Kazakhstan and to make possible maybe to have also a collaboration on those elements. I think early warning is really important, to see early enough what are the new trends and what are the elements where we must be able to bring solutions. I give you an example. In another field, the Council of Europe has now opened for signature the first ever legally binding treaty on artificial intelligence. It was negotiated in the last years between a lot of member states, non-member states. We have more than 40 countries signing right now. We have on board also giants like the US, like in this field like Israel. We have also made this with the tech companies. To address this together, what can we do to make as sure as possible that artificial intelligence will be not a threat for democracy, rule of law, and human rights? This is just one example. Second example, the new convention also for the protection of the profession of lawyers. You know that when we have lawyers under threats, the pressure, it is a problem for the rule of law in a country. And we have also here a new convention. It is open for signature since 2 weeks, and we have already 17 countries joining, also to protect the rule of law. Early warning, to be early enough to recognize the threats or the challenges, new challenges we are facing, and then to work on this is exactly what we do at the Council of Europe. But that's why I think the collaboration also is valuable for Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Alain. Unless, is there anyone else who would like to?
I would like to ask a follow-up. So Europe right now, as well as Canada, start to dismantle many things that were established previously, so many barriers. In Canada, for example, they believe that the artificial dam is much easier to build, and it is better than the hydropower plants. It is more environmentally friendly. So this is the trend that we're seeing in Kazakhstan, and we're building various things that might destroy rivers or lakes. We would like to learn from the best experience and best practices. We have some confusion in this area, and it would be great if Council of Europe also showed interest in that area, maybe provide some recommendations, some guidelines. What is the situation in the Council of Europe in that regard?
Very briefly, thank you. I understood now better what you were mentioning. And I must also recall in this situation that, you know, with 46 member states, it's clear that the Council of Europe is not a state. It is a multilateral organization. And we work for the 46 member states, and we address together issues where we see differences or the necessity to have a dialogue, or maybe to create some collective rules where it is possible to do so. That means it is not replacing what a sovereign country can try to do in the country, but it offer a platform for dialogue and for discussions on this. That's why I was mentioning before, for example, all the discussion that we have now against environmental crimes, for example. But I will take this element with me and maybe also see with our specialists what we can do in this. We are not replacing, you know, the Council of Europe is not the European Union. It is not a political body. It is not like a country. It is really a multilateral organization based on a regional, in this case Europe.
Thank you, Alain. Well, that's going to be it for now. Let's hope that your description of the Council of Europe as an institution that is not just for fair weather times but can pass through bad weather as well turns out to be true. So it just remains for me to ask the audience to thank Alain Berset and wish him good well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.